بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله أحمده وأستعينه وأستغفره. الحمد لله رب السماوات والأرض، رحمن رحيم، عظيم كريم. أحمده وأشكره وأصلي على سيدي وحبيبي وقدوتي محمد صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم أجمعين. ضيفتنا اليوم أيها الإخوة ومقدمة حوارنا اليوم هي الدكتورة هالة محمد القبيلي. الدكتورة مها سوف تتولى تقديم السيرة الذاتية لها والعرض، لكن أنا الآن بس أقول لكم الموضوع هو عن نتائج اختبار آليات البيع في عمليات الاستحواذ وبرامج التسوية مقابل العروض. وأنا شخصياً دخلت على الموضوع هذا وشفت الموضوع ده في عدد من المحاكم الشرعية السعودية هنا، وشفت الأسلوب وعدد الحالات اللي موجودة في القضاء وإلى آخره. فهذا موضوع جدا مهم، وسوف تقوم الباحثة أيضا بربط هذا الموضوع بالجانب الأخلاقي في مقاصد الشريعة. سوف تربط موضوع نتائج اختيارات آلة البيع في عمليات الاستحواذ وبرامج التسوية مقابل العروض في قضية الحفظ على الأموال، وكيف أن ذلك سوف يؤدي أن الأرباح والعوائد للمساهمين ستكون أكبر، وسوف يساعد ذلك بشكل كبير في الحفاظ على أموال الناس، وهو مقصد من مقاصد الشريعة. أعطي المجال الآن للدكتورة مها لتقديم الدكتورة هالة، ثم بعد ذلك الأسئلة كما هو المعتاد، وأسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى التوفيق والتيسير. السلام عليكم. تفضل يا دكتورة مها.
السلام عليكم.
عليكم السلام.
واضح الصوت دكتور؟
جدا جدا واضح ما شاء الله.
طيب، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. دكتورة اليوم حيقدم لنا حوار الأربعاء. تقريبا السنة هذه حتكون أول سيدة بتقدم حوار الأربعاء من شطر الطالبات. سعادة الدكتورة هالة المقابلي هي مشرفة قسم الاقتصاد في كلية الاقتصاد والإدارة، خريجة جامعة درم بزنس سكول، قسم الاقتصاد عام 2017، يعني تعتبر فريش نوعا ما. تخصصها في الدكتوراه كان أو رسالتها في الدكتوراه كانت عن السيلينج ميكانيزم، واليوم حتتكلم عن the selection and the consequences of selling process and takeovers schemes of arrangement vs tender of offers. نبدأ بسم الله مع الدكتورة هالة.
السلام عليكم جميعا. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا محمد عليه أفضل الصلاة وأزكى التسليم. My name is Hala Al-Kubali. I'm from the economics department, female campus. So welcome to my presentation. Written for sale. Have you heard this expression before? Written for sale. Have you heard this expression before? If yes, that means we will enjoy the discussion of today's topic. If not, let me tell you something interesting, because all of us, we are obsessed about anything related to the ownership, either in the economics or in the finance. Before going to the main point of the presentation, I would like to introduce what does mean by tender offer. Tender offer is a mechanism in the UK, in the takeover market, either in the US or the UK, where the bidder can directly go to the target shareholders and ask them to sell their shares immediately without any approval from the target board. Okay? Alex Brember, in his book Britain for Sale, discuss how this mechanism, tender offer, can allow for the foreign predator acquirer to control the big brand in the UK and the most important brand. Let me give you example, the most recent example about that, which is the when in 2010 when the US listed company Kraft acquired the UK listed company Cadbury. Who of us doesn't have a good memory with the Cadbury? Okay, this story, it changed completely. This acquisition, it changed completely the regulation in the UK since 2010. From that time until now, all the time, the regulator in the UK market tried to balance the power between the competitors or between the bidders and the target board that can protect the shareholders, especially the UK takeover regulation having their own philosophy to organize such ownership. So, in my presentation today, so we will learn something about the scheme of arrangement versus tender offer. So we will learn a lot of interesting stories about how the regulations can balance the power between the parties, at the same time how the bidders can play with the looping of the regulation, which gives us a hint. Bidder in the market is very rational in the UK and the US. So I will give a brief hint about M&As in the UK and the US and in the KSA in Saudi Arabia. I will use takeover word to explain the M&As, because British said takeover, US people said M&As. So we will talk about the scheme of arrangement and tender offer process briefly, because there is a lot of looping, can the bidders play with it. So we will talk about the literature review. I will concentrate particularly in the main difference between the two mechanisms which allowed for the diversify the bid premium between the two mechanisms. So I will talk about the research project, about the methodology, and finally about the result and the conclusion. So if you have any question, I will be pleased to answer it at the end of this presentation. Okay. So in the UK market, there is two kinds of mechanism to implement the takeover. Tender offer, which I explained it before, it's acquirer going directly to the shareholders and ask them to tender their shares without any need to approval from the target board. This is a really important point. So if the bidder wants 100% from the acquirer, from the target firms, they should reach 90% from the shareholders' acceptance to squeeze out the minority shareholders, which means hoover the minority shareholders. From the other side, if you want to talk about the scheme of arrangement, scheme of arrangement is agreement between the bidder and the target, which approved by the court. Okay, where the bidders need 75% from the shareholders who has who have the voting power in the company to implement the takeover. If they got the 75% approval from the shareholders, that means immediately they will own 100% of the target company. So there is no risk for the minority shareholders to exist in this kind of scheme of arrangement or in this kind of process. Okay, if you look at the two mechanism, you can find the two mechanism has employ in a different way. That make the regulator in the UK concerned about the scheme of arrangement, because if you see, I need just 75 approval from the company, from the shareholders company to approve the 100% of the ownership of that company. So this could make the acquirer acquire the target company easily and cheaper compared to the tender offer. This is the main argument at the moment in the UK, and there is a lot of interesting stories that make UK regulator change a lot of regulation that related to the scheme of arrangement. Okay? Now, we want to briefly just talk about the history of some very important events that happened in the UK market. As I have said before, the main concern now in the UK market to balance the power between the parties inside the market. I talk about the most recent example, Kraft, when they acquired the most established chocolate maker, Cadbury, in 2010, whereas the change amendment, a lot of amendments have been happened in the economics after this acquisition. If I want to talk about the most recent example that happened by tender offer, which is when Kraft again tried to accuse the Britain company, Unilever, which is one of the most brand in the UK that has 7,000 employees in the company, which is the American company tried to accuse to do acquisition for this company. That means 7,000 employees in risk. This acquisition was implemented, or it was aimed to implement by tender offer, which gave the American company all the right to get the shares from the shareholders immediately without any approval from the target. Okay. So this is a problem with the tender offer. All the power is in the hand of the target, of the bidder hand. If I go back to the scheme of arrangement, there is another concern about the balance of the power in such transaction. For example, if I have for the scheme, as I have clarified before, it's the arrangement between the target and the bidder to accuse the 100% of the target. But what the UK did after the 2010, they prohibit the offer-related arrangement, which make the bidder have some control over the process. But now, after this prohibition, now the target have more control in the process. This could harm the interest of the shareholders, either in the target and the acquirer. So now we are in between two mechanisms that has a power in the hand of the acquirer, if I want to talk about the tender offer, or in the hand of the target, if I want to talk about the scheme of arrangement. So the difference between the two mechanisms is under the spot now in the UK. So let me tell you something about the history again of the shareholders, which is important to understand how this mechanism is very important for the bidder, because they can get a lot of benefit from applying such model. Tender offer are the one area where the British acted before the American. This is right, because UK regulators believe in that shareholders have the right to sell or buy their shares without going back to the board. So the UK frustrated all the defense technique from the bidders to delay or to stop the transaction. In the US, there is a two mechanism, tender offer and merger, but US give the board all the right to do any defense technique to stop this kind of transaction. There is a similarity between the scheme of arrangement and the merger in the US, which is both of them has to be approved by the court, and both of them need approval from the shareholders. Okay? This is very important timeline. If I go to 2007, what happened? UK regulator give more flexibility for the court to implement the scheme of arrangement. That made the scheme of arrangement very popular in the UK in 2007, with the average deal around 8 billion. In the 2011, this kind of popularity of a scheme still increased. If we go to the 2014, still the court implements 65% of the takeover that announced in that year. In 2015, it's a critical year where the UK government moved to ban one of the type of the scheme that allowed for the bidder to avoid 50% of the tax, which we call the stamp duty, because the structure can help the bidder to avoid such taxes. And in 2016 and 2018 is still the takeover dominant, the strategy of the takeover in the UK, which increased the concern. Is the scheme cheaper for the bidder to implement the scheme? But still there is no any evidence in the literature review could confirm that. Okay, this is the country that uses scheme of arrangement. Recently, Saudi Arabia used the scheme of arrangement to implement the takeover in the Part 26 in the a new merger and acquisition law. So this is a question for you as an expert in Sharia. Do you think Saudi Arabia has the full regulation that can help or protect the minority shareholders from this kind of transaction that give all the certainty to the bidder? Okay, so the main objective, I give long stories in the beginning because it will help us to structure the model. So the most important things that I want to investigate in this paper, which is how the choices of different selling could reflect the bidder and target deal, which give me some rationality whether the bidder is rational when they choose different method. So the results, as predicted, show that schemes are typically adopted when the target is large, which is give more certainty to give the bidder in this situation. So scheme happened by the bidder when they are private. This is very important point that help us to know why there is a difference between the bid premium between the two mechanisms. And most likely, less likely, the bidder use the stake to implement the target by scheme of arrangement. Okay? The second one, which is important, I want to answer the question. If the target firms accept the shareholders, is this lower the bid premium? So what I found is, yes, it lowered the bid premium by around 10%. Compared to the tender offer, and one of the most explanation is that tender offer scheme of arrangement have been used mostly to implement the acquisition for the large company, and the large company has a power to bargaining their position and get most certainty about their bid. So we will go back in details for this result. Okay, so let me now move to the literature review. We will talk about what makes the tender offer and the scheme of arrangement different or attractive for some bidder rather than other. So we talk about the threshold of the acceptance level that we need in the scheme and the tender offer. In the scheme is very low compared to the tender offer, but still in the scheme is very high. But in somehow achieving the 90% of the acceptance is not easy procedure. So we will go to another difference between the two mechanisms, which is the size of the target. If the company wants to acquire a big or a very large company or the very established brand, a British brand company in the UK, they will use a scheme to get more certainty about the outcomes. So to do that, they need corroboration from the target, and the scheme can help them to do that. There is something interesting in the scheme. The target board, the target manager or the CEO of the target, do the meeting with the shareholders and convince them to bid for in the right of the scheme, not the bidder. So the bidder for that need a corroboration from the target. From the tender offer, it's not easy. It could happen, the corroboration between the acquirer, but it's much less than the scheme of arrangement. So we can find a good point from this, a very strong point to use the scheme over the tender offer. So if I'm a bidder and I want to acquire 100% of the target and I want to obtain this percentage, at the same time I don't have cash to cover this transaction, so I can use a scheme to get a financial assistance from the target by register the target as a private firm. UK people prohibit this kind of things, which is the financial to get the if you are a bidder and you want to get the financial assistance from the target, they prohibit it because this is not in the best interest of the shareholders. But in the scheme, if the court approves that, so you can get it. This is one of the main motivations that make the bidder use the scheme over the tender offer. So another issue that related to the choice between the scheme of arrangement, which could give us different outcomes or affect the shareholders' wealth, which is if the bidder public bidders, that means they have very incentive to finish or to complete the mechanism, because if they failed, there will be a target for other bidder. So it's very important for the public bidder to finish this or to complete any movement of transaction. At the same time, public bidder, they need to negotiate the synergy of that will accepted after finishing this transaction between target and bidder. That can have it by scheme, but they cannot have it by tender offer, because maybe the structure of the tender offer, when the acquirer need just go to the directly to the bidder. So another concern about the choice between the tender offer and the scheme of arrangement is the length of the procedure in the tender offer. Usually, in the scheme of arrangement, the English court needs 7 to 8 weeks to finish such process. That maybe raise the risk of other bidders to exist in this procedure. Tender offer, its minimum time scale required to complete this procedure is only 21 days. So the procedure is very long in the scheme. So if the target is very important for the bidder, it's better to accuse it or buy the tender offer, because it's a fast and fast procedure compared to the scheme of arrangement. But there is a problem if I implement the takeover by the tender offer. That means I will signal the target is very important for me. That make the firm reservation price will be higher. That means it's a extra cost for the bidder. So all the time, the bidder is in the trade-off between the cost of bidding in the form of tender offer or fast execution of the bid. Okay, so this is the very important point as well, the method of payment. As I have said before, if you want to pay by cash, you have to use a scheme of arrangement to use the financial assistance by re-register the target. But at the same time, if you use the cash, you have to use extra reservation price, because you have to maintain the tax liabilities from paying the tax. In the cost of using cash as a mean of payment in the tender offer will increase as well if you have minority shareholders, which because they will order maybe different prices. I want to talk about the inducement fees. Inducement fees have been prohibited by the UK government because it will lock the target in the interest of the bidder, which is not in the philosophy of the UK regulation. So if the bidder wants the target, they will use the scheme to give them more certainty and offset the prohibition of inducement fees. In tender offer, if the probability of the bid of other bid to exist is very high, so the tender offer prefer to use the tender offer. So finally, I want to talk about there is a lot of different restructure between the tender offer and the scheme, which can use it can use it by the bidders, but I will concentrate in the most important things. The toehold of the is one of the most important ones. Because if you use a scheme, bidder will not. If you use a scheme, so the type of bidder, they don't have a stake in the company. But if you have a stake in the company of toehold, you have to bid in the tender offer because it will be counted in the shares. But the stake that you have it as a bidder before implementing the scheme, it will be not counted in the scheme. So the sample I have used in this study to answer the two questions that I have raised at the beginning. It's from the UK market for the target and acquirer that have been listed in the London Stock Exchange, or both of them is from UK, because I want to control for the difference of the foreign taxes and legal regimes between different countries. I use the private public subsidiaries acquirer. The deal must be at least 1 million, because to control, of course, the size effect, which is common in the such kind of study. The sample is limited to the deal with when the acquirer holds more than 90% of the target, because you know that if I want to compare the tender offer and the scheme, I have to care about the acceptance level, because to implement 100% of the target in the tender offer, you have to reach 90%. If you want to acquire the company by 100% of the company by scheme, you have to get 75% of the target. So I have to make it comparable. This is another restriction. I use it to the sample, but the most important one, I don't use a deal that is switch from tender offer to scheme or from scheme to tender offer to observe the real effect of each method. At the end, I got 240 schemes deal and 563 tender offers. The dependent variable that have been used in this study is the bid premium. Bid premium, it's one of the outcomes of the deals that could help me to understand what is the effect, what is the impact of using scheme on the bidder shareholders. So I'm using the final offer premium. I used another indicators, but for this stage, I'm using just one indicator, which is the final offer premium, and it's very famous in such studies. I calculate the bid premium, which is the difference between the offer the price and the stock price of the company 1 month or 2 months or 3 months before the announcement date, or before the SDC announcement date. SDC announcement date is mean when the data set record the deals. So it's better to use both of them to give more accurate about the result. So if I want to do, in this kind of research, it's very important to look at the explanatory variables. Okay, if you look at the sample, as we predict, the company that the target company that implement by the scheme of arrangement is larger than the company that implements by tender offer, which mean that the bidder are rational about the certainty of using tender or scheme of arrangement to acquire 100% of the target. One of the most important things as well, and the company is in the tender or the scheme of arrangement is older than the tender offer, which is consists with the debate on the UK. It's easy to get the British very good established company by easily. Okay. So now I move to the deal characteristic. If you look at that, the procedure will finish after 100 days from the announcement date, but the tender offer have a short time compared to the scheme of arrangement. We can see that in the crisis time, the number of scheme of arrangement increase, which is give us another hint the bidder is very rational about the power of the scheme of arrangement. Regulation shock, it means it's measure the time after the UK stop using the cancellation scheme. We can see that the owned directly stake before the transaction is high in the tender offer, but not in the scheme of arrangement, which gives another point that could confirm that bidder is very rational in using the tender offer and scheme of arrangement. So the methodology, you know that this is kind of a study when you use it to you need to measure the casual impact of using a scheme on the shareholders. I want to understand, does the scheme of arrangement reduce the shareholders bidder? So I'm using the propensity score matching to measure such thing, which is using, I want to compare the outcomes of the company that use the scheme of arrangement with the wealth that created by the company use tender offer. But I cannot do that immediately because the mean cannot reflect for me the real effect, because there is a bias selection problems. I remove it by using the propensity score matching, which use one dimension to describe the two firms that has the same characteristic and compare between them to get the real effect. So by using this method, I will calculate the treatment effect and which is the ATE, and the ATT, which is the expected casual effect of a treatment for individual in the treatment group, and I'm using the average treatment effect to calculate the expected casual effect of the treatment in all over the sample. I use propensity score matching is quite tricky method. You have to be very sensitive for the story of the deal. For example, it's not easy to put all the variables that is you feel that it affects the outcomes, but there is a very important point in this table. You have to add only the variables that affect the treatment effect and affect the outcomes, which is the premium in this deals, but at the same times happened before the deals. So because that I add or detriment before the deal, because that I add some variables related to this point, firms size, which leverage, the level of the debt, market to book value, private acquirer, to hold and crisis regulation stock, target initiated the deal, and all of them has a sign about the bargaining power of the target. This graph helped me to just make sure there is overlapping between the propensity score matching for the treatment group that company used the scheme, and the treatment group for the company used tender offer. If you remember, one of the main questions I want to know what is the deal or the target characteristic that use scheme or tender offer, I can see that large company, the bidder use scheme of arrangement to implement the takeover for the large company. Private acquirer prefer the scheme of arrangement, and in the crisis, the percentage of the scheme of arrangement that happened in the crisis is very high as well. So the most important result as well is the estimating of the treatment effect of the propensity score. You can see that if I stratify the sample to the bid premium that measured 1 month before the tender offer, before the announcement date, and 2 months before the announcement date, and 3 months before the announcement date, I can see that still the scheme of arrangement reduce the shareholders' wealth by 10%. I'm using different strategy to match one firm to one firm, or one firm to two, or three firm to one firm to three similar firm in terms of the covariant that I have chosen. This is some statistical things can help me to understand what I have did is right. The matching sample have satisfied some statistical things. So this is another table can help me to compare between the finding between different methodology. For example, I used the independent sample t-test. I found that still the scheme of arrangement reduced the wealth of the shareholders. If I use the OLS regression, still I have the same result. If you use the propensity score matching, yes, I'm having the same, even with the regression adjustment. Okay, so the main conclusion of this paper is that to estimate the causal impact of using scheme of arrangement on the shareholders' wealth, we found that yes, the scheme of arrangement could reduce the wealth of the shareholders, and this is consistent with the debate in the UK market that scheme of arrangement helped the bidder to accuse the target firm easily and cheaply. I would like to invite you to some discussion, because I'm here in the people who believe in the 5 main objectives of Sharia. The problem of the using scheme of arrangement is how to deal with the minority shareholders. Maybe there is some kind of unfair to deal with minority shareholders. Yes, this problem could exist in the tender offer, because the minority shareholders could get less price compared with the people who are with the majority. But the pressure is very high in the scheme of arrangement. So, what do you think the Sharia can help in this stage to protect the minority shareholders in such kind of takeover? So this is all what I have. Thank you for listening, and I'm welcoming all the questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. هالة. شكرا جزيلا دكتورة هالة. التقديم الرائع. دكتور إبراهيم, الفلور is open for you. الحوار مفتوح أعتقد في شطر البنين إذا عندهم أي أسئلة أو تعليق. الأخوان.
تفضل سلطان.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أشكر الدكتورة هالة على العرض الشيق في موضوع يخص بريطانيا. قد ذكرت
ممكن تعرفنا بنفسك؟
سلطان عبد السلام، محاضر في معهد الاقتصاد الإسلامي. في موضوع يخص بريطانيا، ذكرت الدكتورة هالة في إحدى الشرائح أنها سوف تتحدث عن النظام السعودي، ولكن لم تتحدث عنه. يعني السؤال الأول، هل الدكتورة هالة توصي بوجود طريقة مخططات التسوية في النظام السعودي؟ السؤال الثاني، فيما يخص لائحة الاندماج والاستحواذ السعودي، هناك عدة طرق سواء كانت الاندماج أو الاستحواذ العادي أو الاستحواذ العكسي لشركة مساهمة أو شركة غير مساهمة. أضرب مثال على ذلك، هناك استحواذ لشركة طيبة قد حاولت عدة مرات الاستحواذ على 100% في الأسهم شركة العقيل، وفي شركات أخرى لم تستطع الحصول على النسبة الكاملة 100%، قد حصلت على 96%. وهذا يقودنا إلى ربطها بالتمويل الإسلامي. فيما يخص موضوعك في السلايد الأخير، لم يتطرق نظام هيئة السوق المالية أو اللوائح التنفيذية إلى التمويل الإسلامي بشكل صريح، وإنما تحدث فقط عن الطرق المناسبة. هل سيكون هناك مثلا في النظام أو في مشروع النظام اللاحق موافقة من المحكمة أو من لجنة الفصل في المنازعات بتقديم عرض آخر مناسب للمساهمين للماينورتي شير هولدرز على سبيل المثال في حالة عدم القبول؟ وهل سيكون هناك طرح آخر أم لا؟ بالنسبة للعروض في السوق، فهي تكون عروض موجودة عن طريق تعميم للمساهمين أو عن طريق وجود استحواذ، يكون إما عن طريق مال كاش أو يكون عن طريق تقديم عيني أو أن يكون بطريقتين. فلا أعتقد بشكل صريح أنه يكون في مجال للتمويل الإسلامي بشكل كامل. فيا حبذا أنه يكون في ربط أكبر مع لائحة حوكمة الشركات ولائحة الميرجر اكويزيشن، أو حتى على الأقل أنه الموضوع نفسه هذا يكون على الأقل يكون فيه خلاصة عن تفضيل أو عن طريق إدخال طريقة جديدة غير مناسبة. لأنه يعني التندر اوفر معروف عندنا، لكن سكيم اوف ارينجمنتس اللي هي تبغى لها بروف من المحكمة ليست موجودة. لكن هل هي طريقة مناسبة؟ فهي يعني ديبيتبل نوعا ما. شكرا جزيلا.
Professor Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Masum from the institute. Thank you very much, Dr. Hala. It's an excellent lecture, and I personally learn a lot from your lecture. Now, this scheme of arrangement seems like a revolution actually against practices today in different parts of the world. So let me share with you. The target board here, you mean the Securities and Exchange Commission or clearing house, either one is not clear here. So now, it means that my question here, that this is too free market. And as the query here, that is this not infringing of the minority right that is commonly we use and practice? Okay. Now, minority shareholders right. Now, second issue, is this not against the taxation rules that we practice today? Third issue here, is this not against the Securities and Exchange rules of the world? Now, fourth issue, fourth query here, that this looks like something like there is some smell of capitalism, means taking advantage at the expense of others. Okay? Or is this not against the rule of Unfair Contract Terms Act 1977? Now, next issue here, is this not against the rules or the practices of the Commonwealth countries? Now, next issue here, how about in Saudi Arabia? In Saudi Arabia, for example, In UK, okay, for example, in UK, when you talk about UK Companies Act, the latest Companies Act, the 2006, at section 979, which provides the exclusive minority shareholders' right. But through this scheme of arrangement is a kind of contradiction and violation. Now, next issue here, how about in Saudi Arabia? In Saudi Arabia, the Companies Act, Saudi Companies Act 1965, Amendment 17 April of 2018 at decree number 79, which provides an exclusive protection of the minority shareholders' right. How about, what do you think about it? If we really try to implement or try to appreciate the scheme of arrangement, that will violate the Saudi Arabians, this particular decree, that the recent decree. Now, next issue here, the Sharia, as you mentioned. How about in Musharaka? For example, in Musharaka, it provides the rights or the protection of every shareholder's minority or majority. Okay, I'm not talking about the preference shareholder. That's a different arrangement. How about in sovereign sukuk, whereby if we really allow the scheme of arrangement, does it not violate the fundamental rules of the country? Okay, and that will infringe the rights of the minority shareholders, and also giving an opportunity to take the advantage at the expense of others. So these are the queries that I'd like to raise. Thank you very much, Dr. Hala.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Dr. Khalim Alam, researcher at the
Go ahead.
This is Dr. Khalim Alam from researcher at the Islamic Economic Institute. I have just a few questions. One is, I was wondering why did you exclude the shifts from a scheme arrangement to tender? Because in a lot of places, and I'm sure even in UK, people must have gone first for the scheme arrangement, which is the norm, because that's the easiest way out. Only when it does not work, people go for tender offer, or you can call it hostile takeover. This is where the offer starts, directly to the shareholders. Excluding that, I don't know what was the logic for you to exclude the shifts. The other question I have is, I don't know, the paper was very lengthy. I felt that it was your thesis or something like that. Did you speak about the foreign bidders who tried to take over the British companies? I don't know if you have talked about it. And I think one of the important positions, while looking at the biddings, the debt consideration of the companies. Are there regulations in UK to stop the companies with high debts? Thank you.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وبعد. أولا نشكر الأخت الفاضلة الدكتورة هالة على هذا العرض الحقيقي الجيد يعني، وعلى هذه المعلومات القيمة، وإن كان الموضوع يعني بعيد عن تخصصنا يعني حقيقة، لكن هناك جهد واضح جدا ومعلومات غزيرة يعني. حقيقة بادرة طيبة يعني، وأتمنى أنها تتكرر مرات ومرات يعني. الأخت هذا حقيقة يبدو أن الدراسة هي موضوع رسالة للدكتوراه وما إلى ذلك، فجميل يعني. لكن حقيقة الأجمل لو يعني عدت لنا نفس الموضوع عن المملكة العربية السعودية كواقع يعني، خاصة أنه الآن اتجاه الاستحواذ ماشي بشكل كبير في كثير حتى من القطاعات المصرفية يعني. ما عندي شيء أقول يعني غير الشكر والتقدير يعني. شكرا لك دكتور.
دكتور منور. دكتور هاشم. دكتور فيصل.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. فيصل اعتباني مع الاقتصاد الاسلامي. شكرا دكتورة على الحقيقة العرض جميل ولغة جيدة. يعني أنا أفهم كأنه أنت استخدمت الدراسات الأدبية أو الليجل ليترشر عشان توصل لنتائج اقتصادية، كأنه هي الدراسة الاقتصادية أصلا، لكن استخدمت فيها المقدمة القانونية. أنا عندي استفسار أو سؤال حول ما مدى أنت أشرت إلى إجراءات أو decision made by the court في المحاكم البريطانية وبناء عليه في موضوع التسوية هذه، مخططات التسوية. الموضوع التسوية أشير له في الانسولفنسي اكت 1986 الإنجليزي، وأشير لي موضوع CVA اللي هو Company Voluntary Arrangement، اللي هو يعني إجراءات سداد الدائنين خلال فترة محددة بأقساط، وإذا فشل ممكن يحال إلى الليكويديشن اللي هو تسجيل الشركة وتصفيتها. هل إذا استخدم ما ذكرتيه اللي هو CVA، هل لو يأثر على نتائج الدراسة اقتصاديا، كون أنت النتائج في الأخير كالكوليشن عندك وعندك نتائج اقتصادية للمقدمة اللي ذكرتيها القانونية، هل إذا اللي ما ذكر هذا اللي هو الارينجمنت هذا CVA اللي ما ذكرتيه او ما كان دراسة موجود فيه بس أنا ما اطلعت عليه، بس في العرض ما كان موجود، لو اتبع هذا الارينجمنت CVA هل حيأثر على النتائج؟ فهذا هو استفساري، لأنه إذا أنت بدأت بداية قانونية فلا بد أنك تختاري يعني البروسيجر الموجودة في الانسولفنسي اكت الموجود البريطاني، لأنه أنت بنيت على الإجراءات هذه ثم توصلت إلى نتائج ميدانية أو تطبيقية. فهنا سؤالي عن CVA ومدى أثره على النتائج اللي توصلت لها، وشكرا.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أنا عمر حافظ من معهد الاقتصاد الإسلامي. الموضوع الاستحواذ طبعا أشكر الدكتورة هالة جزاها الله خير على الموضوع هذا، وأعتقد أنه تسمية شراء الأسهم المعروضة في السوق يعني وهي تكون يعني في الشركة مدرجة في السوق ما يطلق عليه كلمة استحواذ إلا إذا كان إنه 100% من أسهم هذه الشركة معروض للبيع، وبالتالي يمكن تقول تستحوذ، لأنه مفهوم الاستحواذ حسب ما أعرف أنا هو مفهوم لشراء كامل الشركة، لكن شراء جزء من الأسهم استحواذا بالمعنى اللغوي لكن ليس بالمعنى القانوني. المعنى القانوني يتطلب إنه ملكية الشركة أو أصول وخصوم هذه الشركة تنتقل إلى طرف آخر. فلذلك كنت أتوقع أيضا نوع من التفضيل بين عمليات الاستحواذ وعمليات الاندماج أيهما، لأنه في البداية أنت قلت هذا جزء من أدبيات الاستحواذ والاندماج، فأحب أسأل حضرتك أنت إيش التفضيل عندك للشركات خاصة في منطقتنا العربية؟ هل تفضل عمليات الاستحواذ أم عمليات الاندماج، والأثر الاقتصادي لكلا الآليتين؟ وشكرا.
دكتورة مها، انتهى الإخوة هنا من أسئلتهم. أعطيك الميكروفون على أساس إذا في بعض الأخوات يحبوا يعقبوا، أو الأخت الفاضلة الدكتورة هالة إنها تجيب على الأسئلة.
شكرا جميعا لأسئلتكم ومناقشتكم. Thank you for all comments and suggestions. First of all, I want to talk about the Saudi law in merger and acquisition. The Saudi law and merger acquisition just released in 1439. It's just a new one. I read it. It's just a few pages. It's not enough to say this is a law. It's just, I can say it is a hint about how the movement of the change of ownership could be structured. I don't know if you remember the head of financial market of Saudi Arabia have been visit the college last year, and I asked him, have you aware about the consequences of some mechanism that you will use in a new regulation? He said, we are like deal with them individually, so they don't have regulations yet. They just deal with the things individually, with each case. So if I compare what I have read in the UK regulation to a few pages of the new merger and acquisition in Saudi Arabia, there is no point, no significant comparison between them. So they need to justify a lot of movement. So I'm talking about the insolvency. دكتور فيصل سأل عن السكيم اوف arrangement له تاريخ طويل في معالجة القضايا حقة الانسولفنسي. بس في نقطة مهمة جدا. السكيم اوف arrangement صار له 150 سنة في النظام البريطاني. خلاص؟ كمحكم للمشاكل اللي تصير بين الكريديتورز. خلاص؟ لكن البدر صاروا يستخدموه كحل من أصل موجود، كحل قانوني من أصل موجود في القانون البريطاني. لكن السكيم اوف arrangement اللي بيستخدم في التندر اوفرز completely السكيم اوف arrangement اللي مستخدم في التيك اوفر completely different من السكيم اوف arrangement اللي يستخدم في الانسولفنسي. بس انا ارحب اذا if you want to يعني help me to learn more or to do some research, more than welcome. بالنسبة لسؤال دكتور عمر عن الاستحواذ، البريطانيين يستخدموا كلمة استحواذ لكل العمليات سواء كانت اندماج او استحواذ، يقولوا لها تيك اوفرز، فعشان كذا انا استخدمتها وقلت في البدايه انه حستخدمها للاندماج والاستحواذ. الامريكان هم اللي ايش يقولوا ميرجر اند اكويزيشنز، فطبعا هم عمليتين مختلفتين. بالنسبه للاندماج والاستحواذ في الشرق الاوسط يعني بالنسبة لي مبهم الآن، بس ممكن أقول لك عن الاندماج والاستحواذ اللي هو أهم حق أرامكو. إن شاء الله بإذن الله we are working on paper تقيس كيف أرامكو قدرت تستوعب كل ما يقال في الميديا لتقييم أسهمها. هذه under process، وإن شاء الله بإذن الله يعني على نخلصها ويصير عرضها لكم بإذن الله. هذا يستخدموا نموذج في اسمه اللي هو how to analyze the text in the social media. في سؤال ثاني أو
لا، في الحاجات اللي أثارها الدكتور المعصوم إذا كان عندك رد عليها.
في الدكتور تكلم على I think there is a Dr. Khalil talk about the why I use the shift, why I exclude the deal that shifted from scheme of arrangement to tender offer and from the tender offer to the scheme, because we don't know if I use this kind of things. It's very long procedure, has a lot of things could affect this kind of a process. I want a clear deals that start by scheme and end by scheme, and start by tender offer and end by tender offer, because you know there is a lot of distractions comes from the market if I use such things which doesn't help me to understand what is the real effect of the using different mechanisms.
دكتورة مها، بالنسبة لنا احنا هنا ما عندنا أي أسئلة إضافية. إذا في قسم الطالبات في أسئلة أو
دكتور عمر أثار النقطة دكتور إبراهيم عفوا يعني هو مهيب يعني مسألة تعريف الاستحواذ نفسه يعني وأشار إنه الاستحواذ لابد أن يكون كاملا يعني اللي أفهمه أنا في استحواذ كامل، خلي الدكتورة ممكن تعلق يعني استحواذ كامل وفي استحواذ جزئي اللي هو 50% من الأسهم يعني يعتبر تقريبا هو نوع من الاستحواذ يعني.
تفضل الدكتورة هالة.
خلي الدكتورة تعلق إذا سمحت.
دكتور هالة تفضل.
طبعا في فرق بين الاستحواذ والاندماج، خلاص؟ الاستحواذ انه شركه تستحوذ على جزء او زي ما قال الدكتور كل الشركه انها ايش تشتري جزء او كل عن طريق اللي هو ايش سؤال التندر اوف اللي هم الشير هولدرز، لكن الاندماج يتم بالموافقه، اذا نتكلم عن اليو اس ماركت يتم بالموافقه بين التارجت خلاص وبين البدر بموافقة المحكمة، ولازم تكون الشركة الطالبة للاندماج حصلت على 50% ويقدر فيها المدير التنفيذي للشركة المستحوذ عليها انه يقدم، اذا ما كان راضي عن الاجريمنت انه يقدر يقدم كل الديفنس تكنيك اللي تحميه من هذا الاندماج. يعني it's very long procedure مع الميرجر لكن في الاكوزيشن شويه في less procedure to defense the agreement. هو واضح في السلايد.
دكتورة هذا في سؤال من الدكتور سعد اللحياني، تفضل دكتور. الميكروفون جنبك.
شكرا دكتور على العرض الله يبارك فيك، بس يعني هل في بس كيسز عن المصارف البنوك؟ شكرا لك دكتور.
هو اللي يعني كان السكيم اوف ارينجمنت الدكتور دخل للقانون السعودي عام 1439 يعني مره جديد، حتى يمكن حتى لو قريت انت اللائحه اللي هي الماده 26 بالتحديد حتلاقيها مبهمه، يعني لو تقرا اللائحه حقت السكيم اوف ارينجمنت في القانون البريطاني تلاقيها يمكن 1000 صفحه عن كل موفمنت، فلسه احنا يعني النيو يعني في التعامل مع هذه. حتى لو سالت اللي يبغوا يستحوذوا الان على الشركات عن اليه السكيم اوف ارينجمنت كمان مبهمه لهم. حتى لما جاء القويز رئيس هيئه سوق المال قال احنا نتعامل معها يعني individualities لو انها تضر لو حصلت، يعني معناتها لسه ما حصلت.
دكتور إبراهيم عندكم سؤال؟
لا احنا انتهينا، يعني انتم في عندكم اي شيء؟
لا ما عندنا الان.
طيب.
شكرا الله يعطيكم العافيه، وصراحه انا اول مره اعرض شغلي على متخصصين، دائما اعرض شغلي على طلاب بحكم الدراسه والاشياء اللي يعني ترتبط بالدراسه، فاذا في اي شيء تبغوا تضيفوه ايميلي موجود، فانا في اي تعاون انا more than welcome. يعني ownerships و how to deal with this kind of regulation, it's my passion and I will continue this passion with research إن شاء الله.
دكتورة هالة، الدكتور فيصل يحب إنه يجلي بنقطة في الموضوع.
بس أحب أوضح شيء، هو العادة إحنا يصدر عندنا وإحنا دائما ملخبطين ما بين اللائحة والنظام والقانون، فهو يفترض هي اسمها لائحة، ما هي لائحة، هي الحقيقة نظام، والنظام دائما يجي مقتضب، يجي بمواد مقتضبة، وفي زي ما تشوف ممكن تكون مبهمة، وبعد فترة تنزل اللائحة التنفيذية. اللائحة التنفيذية هي اللي توضح التفاصيل هذه كلها. لائحة نظام الاستحواذ ترى أخذت من أسسها وصول من النظام القانون البريطاني، لكن يبدو إلى الآن ما نزلت اللائحة التنفيذية اللي هي توضح الإبهامات اللي أنت تقولي عنها، هي فعلا مقتضبة زي ما صدر في رمضان نظام السلوك اللي يسموه الآداب، ثم صدرت من وزارة الداخلية لائحة تنفيذية بالعقوبات والمخالفات وكذا. فهو الآن ما صدر اللائحة التنفيذية اللي فيها التفصيل اللي يبعد الإبهام والغموض عن النظام اللي صدر في اللائحة والمواد اللي صدرت في اللائحة. بس هذا التوضيح يعني.
دكتورة هانة، الدكتور فيصل عتباني تخصص قانون، وممكن انه كثير من الاشياء القانونيه في المستقبل اذا حبيتي انك انت تصلي فيه لدعمك او للمشاركه في اوراق بحثيه علميه اخرى. تفضل دكتور.
ان شاء الله باذن الله. It's my pleasure.
طيب، شكرا جزيلا للجميع. في نهايه هذا اللقاء يشرفني باسم عميد المعهد الدكتور عبد الله قربان تركستاني، وباسم اختنا الدكتور مها ديجاني وكيله المعهد في قسم الطالبات، وباسم الإدارة عامة وجميع الباحثين، أن أقدم خالص شكري وتقديري للدكتور هالة القبلي. أشكرها على جهدها وعلى دعمها، أشكرها على مساندتها. حقيقة الدكتورة هالة كانت المفروض من العام الماضي تقدم لنا هذا الحوار، لكن نظرا لظروف خاصة أتمنى أنها تشارك معنا في الحوارات في المستقبل. وأشكر جميع الحضور وأشكر جميع الأسئلة، أتمنى لكم التوفيق وإجازة نهاية أسبوع جميلة ومباركة، في أمان الله.